Are you as fascinated by scary stories and true crime as I am? Maybe it's time for you to make your own podcast. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First off, it's free, which is awesome. There's also creation tools that allow you to edit and record your own podcast right from your phone, like I'm doing now, or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Hello, and welcome to Tales After Dark. This is a podcast that will be filled with scary stories and diving deep into the world's most treacherous cult crimes. Many of the paranormal and let's not meet scary stories heard here are from articles I have found on Reddit. Author information and usernames will always be included in the show notes below each episode. To submit a terrifying tale of your own, please email stories.talesafterdark@gmail.com and make sure to follow /TAD podcast on Reddit for Tales After Dark fan subreddit information. This show is brought to you by the MW Network and produced by me, your host, Emma Dawn. Do you have a podcast or show idea of your own? For more information on the MW Network, visit themommywines.com. Tales After Dark is made possible by our sponsors, the Home Bookkeeper Masterclass. Looking to create a life of balance and financial freedom? Check out how I was able to ditch the 9-to-5 grind and spend more time creating and doing the things I love by becoming a home bookkeeper. More information on the Home Bookkeeper Masterclass can be found on my company website, edjconsultinggroup.com, under Resources. Zaya Active. What's better than curling up in a nice pair of leggings and your Tales After Dark merch sweatshirt and listening to a spooky tale? In my completely biased opinion, not much. Visit myzaya.com/EmmaDawn for premium and affordable men and women's active and loungewear, and make sure to check out the Tales After Dark merch store on teespring.com. If you are a brand and would like to sponsor the Tales After Dark podcast, please get in touch at stories.talesafterdark@gmail.com. Now let's get into today's episode. Family Secrets, Part 2 of 3. My head felt like it was going to explode. Conflicting thoughts buzzed inside my skull like the cacophonous chattering of a million crickets, and rapid ebb and flow of emotions caused my mind to sway from one extreme to another so quickly that I was afraid I was going to end up collapsing onto the living room floor, a drooling, vacant-eyed mess. At first, I couldn't bring myself to believe what I was hearing. Surely Dad was lying, pulling my leg, playing a prank on me just before my birthday to lighten the mood. It seemed to be the only rational explanation. But there's no way that he would do something so messed up. Just no way. On the other hand, if he was indeed telling me the truth, then that meant I had been lied to my entire life. I was never meant to live. Mom knew that, yet never felt pertinent enough to inform me of the fact. She had sold me off to some creature. I was just a sacrifice, just trash to be disposed of to help her get a comfortable life. Anger bubbled up inside of me, to be quickly replaced by guilt. How could I think something like that? Mom was in such a difficult place. I couldn't even imagine what life must have been like for her. And even after making her way out of hell and getting the life she always wanted, She still chose to die protecting me. Tears stung my eyes. Good God, I had been mourning a false memory all this time. For all these months, I had been unaware of how she really died. I was told it was a car accident, that the chrome teeth of a truck had bitten a chunk out of my beautiful mother, when in fact the truth had been much more sinister. She broke a promise to a monster and was murdered for it. And I was next. Fear crept up my back like a caterpillar. Suddenly things began to make sense. Like a translucent veil was torn from my eyes. The reason for the trip, that odd fence outside, the medallion around my neck, why Dad and Uncle Barney were so afraid. We had come up here to fight the thing that killed Mom. Could we fight it? Something supernatural that could grant wishes and demand children as tributes? Was there any hope of defeating something like that? Did Mom try and fail? Was I doomed as well? Anger swelled up inside me again. If I had just been informed of my fate earlier, I would have been better prepared for what's to come, for my death. I didn't want to die. I excused myself, mumbled good night to Dad and Uncle Barney, and lumbered back upstairs to my room. Thankfully, they let me have my space. I had a lot to process. I had just found out that fairy tale monsters were real, that one had killed my mom and was now coming after me. The very existence of this thing turned everything upside down. The world seemed darker, more terrifying. Every shadow that moved seemed to hide a monster, and its inky blackness. Suddenly mirrors seemed dangerous, like my reflection was going to jump out of the silvery pool and drag me off to a world without light. Even the soothing moonlight that bounced off the lake and painted my room in a pale white glow seemed terrifying. And the cold evening breeze nipped at my skin hungrily. I shuddered, slithered into bed, pulled my thick blanket over my head and squeezed my eyes shut, knowing that I would never sleep quite as comfortably as I had just the night before. I wrapped my fingers tight around the medallion, like it was the only thing standing between me and death, and forced myself to fall asleep. It didn't work at all. For hours I lay there, imagining one nightmare after another, lurking near the property, waiting to claim its prize. I could almost hear the graceless gnashing of jagged teeth, the smacking of wet lips of some creature crouched under the porch outside my window, where the water lapped against the wooden beams. I all but yelped when I heard my dad whisper goodnight to me before leaving for his bedroom, his footfalls softly echoing in the hallway. I flitted in and out of consciousness for hours before I was fully roused by a faint thump coming from downstairs. My body tensed up. What was that sound? Did I imagine it? There it was again, like someone was slamming their hand on a slab of wood. Was Uncle Barney still up? The sound was getting frantic now. Maybe somebody was at the door. Maybe it was the monster. I wanted to ignore it. I was too terrified to actually go and check what it was. But then another noise joined in. This one even fainter than the thumping. I got up on my elbows, strained my ears, and listened. And with it, crying. Soft, feminine cries of someone desperate for help. Fear coiled around my heart like a rope and squeezed. Maybe somebody was being tortured by the very monster that was hunting me. Some innocent drunk who was stumbling around the woods ended up being attacked by the monster that was only out there because of me. It was too much for me to bear. I rolled out of bed and crept out of my room. The narrow hallway was dark, with the only illumination being the moonlight that poured in from the small circular window at the far end. I noticed that the doors to the rooms of my dad and Uncle Barney were locked shut. The sound was louder out in the hallway. Clutching my medallion, I ran to Dad's room and rapped my knuckles on the door. "Dad, are you up?" I croaked, before clearing my throat. "I think someone's at the front door." No response. He was asleep, too exhausted from all the stress. I knocked again, to the same result. "Help!" I heard for the first time. "Is anyone there?" The voice was muffled, frightened. My hands turned clammy with sweat. Someone was in need of help, and it was up to me to decide what to do. I tried Uncle Barney's door, but he didn't respond either. "Please!" I saw the lights were on. I could sense the fear in her trembling voice. "Oh God, please help me." The woman was slapping her hands on the door now, and both the adults in the house were refusing to wake up. I had debated with myself as to what my next step should be. Do I ignore her? Or do I go help her? I couldn't just leave her. I couldn't. "Please, it's going to kill me." The faint strain in her words, like a rope stretched to the point of snapping. "Fuck it." "Wait, I'm coming," I yelled, and began descending the creaky stairs that were enshrouded in darkness, taking care not to trip and fall. After reaching the bottom, I quickly flipped the light switch on, squinting, and saw that the knob to the front door was turning fruitlessly. "Please, open it." "Oh God, it's here. Oh God, oh God, oh God." Loud, animalistic growls ripped through the air, and a chill jolted down my spine like an electric current. I paused. An involuntary action, driven by pure fear. It was out there, the thing that was slavering for me, just beyond the door. "Hurry, please. It's almost here." Those growls again, this time closer, much closer. I clenched my fists and bolted towards the door, reached for the latch, my trembling fingers wrapping around the cold metal. "Sierra, stop!" My heart nearly gave out a loud yell. I whirled around and saw Dad at the top of the stairs, clad in a white t-shirt and boxers, eyes wide open. He had a hunting rifle in his hand. "Stop," he repeated. "Don't open it." Thump, thump, thump. "Please, let me in." "Don't." "What do you mean, Dad? She needs help." "It's not who you think it is, honey." "Barney!" "Please, I don't want to die. I don't want to die." "Can you not hear her?" "Yes, I can. It's not what you think it is, okay?" "Barney! Wake the fuck up!" "I don't understand." "Open the door, please. I'm begging you." An anguish-filled scream rang out, slashing through the wood and reverberating in the cabin, followed by nauseating sounds of teeth tearing into flesh and blood gurgling in the throat. "She's dying out there." "Step away from the door, honey." "Barney!" "Coming." Uncle Barney's footsteps came bounding down the hallway as Dad began running down the stairs. He took my quaking hand and pulled me off to the side, before aiming his gun at the door. Uncle Barney was the next to join us. His hands wrapped around his trusty shotgun. The screams continued, each piercing note bringing fresh tears to my eyes. "Dad, what's happening?" He didn't answer, just nodded at Uncle Barney, who marched towards the door, before taking position next to it. He turned his neck to look at Dad. "Ready?" he mouthed. Dad nodded. Uncle Barney unlocked the door, swung it open. There was no one outside, and yet the screams continued regardless, as if someone invisible was being murdered on the doorstep. I saw the white sheets with Arabic letters painted on them, gently fluttering in the wind for just a second before Uncle Barney slammed the door shut. That's when the screams came to an abrupt halt, like they had never existed in the first place, and the cabin was plunged into a heavy silence. Dad quickly propped the gun up to the side of the couch and pulled me in for a hug. "Dear God, I thought I was going to lose you. I'm so scared, Dad," I cried into his chest. "It's okay. I'm here." "Do you have the talisman on you?" I nodded, my heartbeat thumping against the cold metal on my chest. "Good." He pulled back, taking my face in his hands. "You have to be very careful, Sierra. This thing can cause very powerful hallucinations, okay? Don't do anything like this again. Not without talking to either of us." I did. I protested. "I knocked on your door. Uncle Barney's too." His eyes widening, he shot a quick glance at Uncle Barney and slowly shook his head. "No, you didn't, sweetie. You couldn't, because our doors were wide open. They've been open the whole night." My knees wobbled. "Then that thing tricked you into thinking you had tried to get our help and drew you downstairs," Uncle Barney said, his gruff voice a bit shaken by the ordeal. "But it was all so real." My heart thumped so hard in my chest it felt like my sternum was about to crack. "I know, honey," Dad said. "And that's what makes this fight so damn difficult. Listen," he continued as Uncle Barney pulled aside the curtains on the window next to the door and peered outside. "It wants you to leave the safety of the house, okay? So everything that you do, every action that you take, must be taken keeping that in mind. You cannot trust anything that you see or hear. Do you understand? Keep your safety first and foremost." I nodded, and Dad wiped my face before kissing my forehead. "You should have told her all about this before you got here," Uncle Barney growled. I was just trying to protect her," Dad said weakly. "And look where that's gotten us. She almost sauntered out of the house." Yeah, you're right," Dad admitted, before focusing on me again. "It's my fault. I'm sorry. I should have told you everything. I just couldn't. Thought that I could shield you from it, so that you wouldn't have to be exposed to any more of this. I'm so sorry." "It's okay," I replied, even though it wasn't. My mind was still coming to terms with the fact that I had been so utterly fooled. I'd never experienced such powerful hallucinations. Ever. I could still feel the slight burn in my knuckles where they had scraped against the doors to their bedrooms. How could that not be real? "I'm gonna go grab my laptop. Let's check the CCTV footage and confirm once and for all whether Liam was right or not, yeah?" Uncle Barney said and stomped up the stairs without waiting for a reply. "Who's Liam?" I asked. "Barney's friend. He's been helping us with all of this," Dad replied. He then took my hands as we sat on the couch. "Sierra, I need you to promise me something. Promise me that if you have even the slightest shred of a doubt that something is wrong, You're gonna run to the basement and lock yourself up in there, okay? Okay. Even if me or Uncle Barney seemed to be in danger. I opened my mouth to protest, but he quickly cut me off. This is not negotiable. You will do this. You're the one it wants, not us. We can take care of ourselves. Remember, I've already survived an encounter with that thing, so promise me. I nodded reluctantly. Good. Tomorrow, Uncle Barney is going to teach you how to run the boat. In case the worst happens, you're going to use it to cross the lake and go to Mr. Shaw's house on the other side of the shore. Stay with him until Aunt Emily comes to pick you up. In case what happens? I asked, already knowing the answer. Uncle Barney's heavy footsteps saved us from the conversation. He plopped himself down on the chair beside us and placed the laptop on the coffee table. In less than a minute, he had pulled up the CCTV footage from the front of the house for the last half hour. The grainy, silvery video showed the relative stillness of the night outside the house, wind pressing the unkept grass down to the ground, white sheets fluttering lazily, puddles gleaming under the moonlight, tree branches swaying in the distance, and that's it. Nothing else. Nothing that would suggest that a wounded woman was desperately trying to enter the house. A shudder ran through me. Uncle Barney heaved a tense sigh. Liam was right. This thing can't break the barrier we've set up, and is instead trying to draw Sierra out using hallucinations. Yeah, Dad said as he leaned back. Looks like we are really dealing with a Dijon. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, make sure to leave a rating and review. For more scary stories and spooky content, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. Do you want to stay up to date with me, your host, Emma Dawn? Then make sure to follow me on Instagram. Details and links are always in the show notes below. And if you want to be featured in an upcoming episode, make sure to leave a voice memo on Anchor, my podcast platform. And until next time, stay safe, stay spooky.